Washington. That's not Texas that steals that money. I don't want my money stolen every time I make something. That's the wrong way of doing stuff. You know, here we are talking about health care and cap and trade and all this stuff that we know we hate. They won't even fix Social Security. They won't even stop that. How in the world are they going to stop all this other stuff? Sovereignty ain't the answer. Secession is the answer. I hear a lot of folks talk, oh, well, if we got that secession, we're going to have a war on our hands. No. We got men in the military, men and women in the military every day come on my website and talk about how they're behind us. 15% of the U.S. military is Texans. How many more of them are Southerners? How many more of them have already experienced the wrath of the United States coming down on them and killing them? We're tired of it. We hate the United States. Get out of our lives. Get off our backs. Move on. Texas needs to be free. Texas needs to be independent. We don't want no war. We ain't going to have no war. We can do this via peaceful means. If our governor today would call a special session of the legislature and tell them, y'all come up with the constitutional amendment where we can get rid of this current constitution we have here in Texas, which is that thick, and get us a real constitution here in Texas, and then the people of Texas vote on a constitution that's acceptable for a nation, we could have us a free and independent nation in Texas. We could then send our U.S. senators and U.S. representatives up there to Washington and work with them. Say, hey, how do we let a state be free? How do we divide the assets and the liabilities between the states that want freedom? It's not just Texas that wants their freedom. Oklahoma wants their freedom. Georgia wants their freedom. Alaska wants their freedom. There's many, many states that want their freedom. There's not going to be a war. It's going to be a breakup, kind of like the Soviet Union did. We want freedom. We want secession. We do not want sovereignty. Somebody else can have that sovereignty stuff. We want freedom. Total and complete freedom. Secession. That U.S. flag is coming down. U.S. flag is coming down from over Texas. It will not be part of Texas anymore. We want freedom. Our boys fought for it. Some folks say, well, is secession legal? Well, you go ask George Washington what he thought about legal secession. He could care less. He did it anyway. You go ask Sam Houston what he thought about secession. He did it anyway. Even though it may have been illegal, he did it anyway. I have no clue about the legality of it. All I do know is that's what we as Texans need. Secession is the answer. Thank you.
Hey, Larry. Okay, we're going to be moving right along here. Not move on, but moving along. Okay? All right, next thing I want to kind of touch on real quick was this. And I'm going to kind of read something real quick to you. If you haven't heard my radio show, one of the things that I try to tell everybody about is this, to make it really understood. For 4 months, they had to take that original draft of the Constitution written by predominantly Alexander Hamilton. And they started writing through it and scratching through it. We can't say that, can't say this, can't say that. They sent it down to, finally George Washington agreed to send it to the states. They thought that they had something that the 13 colonies would accept. When they got there, you know what they said? Oh, hell no. Oh no, we're not going to take that. So men like George Mason stepped up and he says, no, let me tell you, I've got an objections to the Constitution to George Mason. And he was one of the ones that helped draft our Bill of Rights. Anybody familiar with the Bill of Rights? Please tell me you know that you've got some rights out here. You know, we have a whole lot more rights than the 24 that are enumerated or listed in the Bill of Rights. We've got all those that are in the 9th Amendment. See, in addition to the 10th, we've got to get the 9th back too. Okay? That includes your right to travel. That includes your right to marry who you wish. The right to work where you want to without permit or license. Oh my God. You see, the fact is, we nowadays have no clue about the liberty that we had back then. Do you know that the only exposure the average American citizen had at the end of the Civil War to the federal government was when they saw the postman coming down the road. That was it. The federal government had no other touch in your life. They didn't regulate commerce. Now we've got Montana and Tennessee passed their gun law bill repealing all federal gun laws within those states, and immediately the federal government, exactly, the fact is immediately the federal government says, oh, no, you can't do that. You know, we supersede you. Well, excuse me, the power rolls down from us. The authority comes from us. It doesn't roll up to them. So that's where we're at, folks. So we've got to get it back to that point, and that means the Ninth Amendment has to be respected, all of our unalienable rights. And if anybody is listening to me that happens to be a legislator or even a lawyer, please read through Blackstone's commentaries on the English common law, because that's exactly where they all came from. Now, pastors and preachers all across the country at that time, 13 colonies, stood up and talked about every one of these rights. You know what they called themselves? The Black-Robed Regiment, because of the black robes they wore behind their pulpits. There's a man by the name of Chuck Baldwin that just ran for president that almost nobody knew about. He's a Baptist preacher out of Sarasota, Florida. He and his congregation stepped outside of the 501c3 so that they could speak out about what was really happening. Now there's over 400 churches across the country. How many churches did you know of that are willing to step up and do this right now? Oh, I don't hear a lot of socks out here. We've got to change that, folks, because this is what's going to help us. Now he said, and I'm going to quote George Mason real quick, in the House of Representatives there is not the substance but the shadow only of representation. Does that seem to still exist now? Okay. Then he said the President of the United States has no constitutional counsel. In other words, he has nobody to advise him on the constitutionality of things. Why do you think that our President doesn't do anything that's constitutional? Yeah, czars all over the place with no congressional oversight. Okay? Under their own construction of the general clause at the end of enumerated powers, the Congress may grant monopolies in trade and commerce, constitute new crimes, inflict unusual and severe punishments, and extend their power as far as they shall think possible. Now, that is exactly what has happened, folks. So I want to make sure that everybody understands this. We've got to roll it back to those basic principles, and it's the men like George Mason and Thomas Jefferson that we need to hold to. Okay? Now, we wanted to go ahead and get some rapid-fire things in here, and I know that President Daniel Miller, the Texas Nationalist Movement, was going to come on up and have a few people. But one thing I'm going to start with real quick, if he can come on up here. We've got Joe Petronas is also here. I wanted to get him on up here. And I also want to have somebody else out here, and I won't speak for this because I'm going to tell you, folks, I was graduating high school in '77, so I was not involved in Vietnam. I didn't go over there. Okay? But we need to say something about all the veterans that have been laying down their lives for all of these rights, all of these principles. And when they take an oath of office, they hold it sacred. Our law enforcement officers. We've got a lot of law enforcement officers that really want to stand up to the Constitution, but they're being told not to. That's got to stop. So right now, I want to take 5 seconds, and I want everybody to just go ahead and say something in your heart. Pray. Just a few moments of silence for the veterans that have had to put down their blood for this. All right. Well, definitely I've invited God into this, but I guarantee that He's already been here. As a matter of fact, I think that God has a permanent residence somewhere in Texas. I don't know exactly where, but if somebody knows, send me an email. All right, Joe, let me go ahead and bring you on over real quick. Like I said, Joe's running for Representative District 10. Joe Petronas.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Joe Petronas. I'm running for U.S. Congress. Unlike your traditional candidate, though, I didn't go to law school. I went to business school. Also, I've worked in the private sector all my life. Over the past 6 years, though, I've become frustrated and concerned with the direction of our country. We are spinning ourselves into oblivion and allowing the federal bureaucracy to spread its tentacles wide.